Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the latest edition of Wow Lynch Wow, dedicated to filmmaker David Lynch and inspired by the triumphant return of Twin Peaks. A disclaimer to everyone who isn't caught up on all 5 episodes of the new season of Twin Peaks: there will be spoilers, and they will begin any second, so viewers and listeners be warned. So things start in Vegas, where the 2 would-be assassins phone their boss with an update. And she's very nervous about this setback, as the job was supposed to be completed yesterday. At this point, I'm imagining Bad Coop set all of this in motion for a specific day. So this woman anxiously sends a message on an old phone that alerts a receiver of some type that's placed inside a bowl. The old phone continues with a theme that a lot of the stuff that's happening in Dougie's world could have been stuff that would more appropriately fit in the recent past. We move on to a headline from the morgue, where a ring was found inside the mysterious body in Ruth Davenport's room. The ring said, "To Dougie, with love from Jeannie E." Is this suggesting some type of connection between Dougie and Major Briggs? Meanwhile, Bad Coop is stuck in jail. He's studying the routine of the guards, and he seems to know when the food is coming just before it arrives. We then see Cooper gaze into a mirror. Bob is still in there. It's fainter, it's a little harder to discern. It's not as obvious when we saw him during Where's Annie, but Bob is there. This is significant, and this dispels some of the theories floating around that Bob was no longer with Doppelkoop. So this is a significant revelation, but it also seems to distinguish them, Bob and Bad Coop, as separate entities. We then get to see Mike Nelson for the first time. He calls in a young broken down named Steven, whose resume gets torn apart, and he's actually told by Mike that it's the worst resume he has ever seen. He gets told to clean his act up, and after he leaves, Mike calls him a nasty name. Sheriff Frank Truman is on the phone with his brother Harry, and they're talking about medical tests. And Harry mentions something to Frank about hang in there. And I think that this confirms that Harry's issues appear to be physical and not mental, as many fans have speculated. Frank's wife Doris comes in, and we get to see her for the first time, and she's mighty perturbed about the leaking pipes. Frank suggests a bigger bucket to her, and she's none too happy about this either. She then complains of car troubles and accuses poor Frank of being impossible when he seems like one of the most agreeable people around. So Good Coop and Jeannie E come out, and Cooper becomes saddened when he detects a sadness in Sonny Jim. Janie's mentioned that they've won $425,000, and when she sees Cooper distracted, she thinks that Dougie is having another episode. His car isn't around, and Jeannie E is wondering where it is, so she agrees to drive Dougie to work. Assassins pull up to the home where we saw Dougie and Jade previously. They see that his car is still there. They drive away, and then another shady car pulls up with loud, angry music blasting. These lowlives were scoping out Dougie's car. So instead of taking Dougie to a hospital, Jeannie E decides it's best just to drop him off and leave him at work. This despite the fact that Dougie's having all sorts of problems doing the most trivial everyday daily tasks imaginable. She shoves him off to the car to work, and he's roaming around, and he becomes mesmerized by a statue of a man pointing a gun. This seems to be another one of those things, like coffee, that have clued Cooper into some of his past life. He's simply mesmerized by this statue, perhaps reminding him of his responsibilities in law enforcement. He follows the direction that the gun was pointed in, and he happens to wander into a colleague who's a man carrying a lot of coffee. Coop starts sniffing out the coffee like Gollum. They get in the elevator. Coop, still sniffing around, insists he wants a coffee, so his buddy reluctantly gives him Frank's coffee, and Coop starts chugging it gluttonously. And great, more numbers. When they arrive at the meeting, another colleague whispers to Cooper's ear that he covered his ass and that he owes him one. Frank is none too happy when he sees Dougie greedily drinking his coffee, and he makes his displeasure known. He reluctantly settled on a green tea latte, and he looks suspicious of it at first, but it seems to have ultimately won him over. Or did it? Coop gets seated by the coffee-bearing colleague, and he accuses Tony, the man who whispered to him earlier, of being a liar. This causes a great deal of tension at the meeting. When Cooper said he's lying, this sounded very Cooper-esque to me, kind of like when he accused Leo of lying during their first encounter.
Did you know Laura Palmer?
No.
How well did you know her?
I said I didn't.
You're lying.
He's lying.
You're lying.
He's lying.
You're lying.
Coop then meets with the big boss, and he gets warned that he's on very thin ice, pending the results of the new project they just give him. Then we find poor Cooper having to urinate, which is no surprise after all that coffee he chugged. A female colleague notices his predicament, and she generously offers to sneak him inside the ladies' room. Then she appears to be hitting on Cooper before relenting and offering to stand guard outside the bathroom. The casino manager's bosses are none too happy about all the jackpots that Cooper hit. In fact, they're irate, and they rough him up and fire him right there on the spot. A room full of people watch on, including the security guards holding him up, and also some show dancers who watch this incident with complete indifference. That is, everyone watched on with indifference, except for the newly hired replacement of the guy who just got the shit beat out of him. The son of the 119 woman decides to inspect the device he previously saw placed under Dougie's car across the street. Just as he begins fiddling around with it, the broken downs from earlier return, and they chase the key away so they can try and steal the car.
Grand Theft Auto.
But when they start the car, it explodes, taking out 3 of the 5 ruffians which foiled their master plans. When the boy returns home, his mother awakens from a stupor. Jade got her car cleaned out, and she's given Cooper's Great Northern hotel keys, which she proceeds to drop into a nearby mailbox, which no doubt will raise a few eyebrows when it returns to Twin Peaks. But when will it return? Or when did it return? Shelley loans her daughter Becky some money, and Norma and her watch on disapprovingly. She enters a car with Steven, the same young broken down guy from earlier who was told to clean up his act. And then Steven starts talking to Becky, and to me, he's using a lot of the similar language, the type of language that Bobby previously used with Shelley. Becky and Steven escape the menacing glare of Shelley and Norma, and they park in a secluded area to kiss and to snort some blow. During her subsequent dreamy high, Becky's face looked eerily reminiscent of Laura Palmer's face in the final scene of Fire Walk With Me. At least it appeared so to me. So after a hard day's work, harder than most people seem to recognize, Cooper leaves work, and then on his way out, he once again becomes mesmerized by the statue. Andy and Hawk together are searching for what's missing, looking through the old Laura Palmer files. They can't find any connection to Hawk's heritage, but meanwhile, Laura's diary is sitting right in the middle of the table, and it appears neither of them has bothered to look at it. I maintain that that's what's missing. The diary pages that Annie told Laura to write from Fire Walk With Me. And the connection to Hawk's heritage is when he spoke about entering the lodges in the original series, and how one must face his shadow self and all of that. We then learn that Dr. Lawrence Jacoby has some kind of video podcast, and it's just as insane as you'd hope it would be. He has some really big fans in Nadine, and also in Jerry Horn, and he likes to toke along with the entertainment. Was this all really just a pitch to sell marked up shovels that Jacoby buys in bulk and paints gold? Or is there a greater purpose with his methods here? Dr. Amp's gold shit-digging shovel? That's brilliant. If they ever plan to do a Twin Peaks spin-off, we may have a winner here, folks. Then we go to the Pentagon, where we learn Colonel Davis is informed about the 16th hit of Major Briggs's missing body that's occurred over the last 25 years. He sends someone named Cindy to South Dakota to investigate. We then arrive at the Roadhouse, and the Roadhouse is a rockin'. A shady-looking character is smoking a cigarette near a no-smoking sign. A manager comes over and complains, but someone who appears to be a bouncer promises to handle it. The man continues smoking, and he hands the bouncer a pack of smokes with some money hidden inside. The man is then beckoned by one of 4 young ladies seated in the booth next to him. Initiating this conversation proved to be a mistake. Then he grabbed her violently and said some very unpleasant things to the lovely young girl who we learn is named Charlotte. Then we see Agent Tammy Preston is studying information on Cooper, and she sees something that grabs her attention regarding his fingerprints. Then Bad Coop gets his phone call in jail. Everything is bugged per Gordon's instructions, but Cooper is onto them. He begins effectively taunting the eavesdroppers before rapidly dialing something into the phone that appeared to trigger something totally chaotic with the electrical systems in the jail. Everything went haywire. Then Cooper said, "The cow jumped over the moon." And when he hung up after saying that, everything abruptly stopped, and everyone who witnessed this firsthand was left utterly baffled. Then we go to Argentina and we see the box from earlier inside the wooden bowl. That's where it is, Argentina. And when it's activated, it crumbles up into a little ball. And things conclude with our beloved Agent Cooper continuing to be mesmerized by the statue. Overall, I thought Part 5 was the best part to date. That was a densely packed hour that felt like it covered almost as much ground as the first 4 episodes combined, with a lot of things pressing forward, with a lot of new mysteries coming into play, where we now are left with a lot more questions and a lot fewer answers. I, for one, can't wait to see where things go next. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Please share your thoughts in the comments section. Hope you enjoyed, and have a good night.